Welcome to The Conscious Creative from MuseWorks Audio. The Conscious Creative is a podcast featuring interviews with artists who are doing transformational work in their craft and in their communities. Join us as we discuss different artistic philosophies, give you brand new tools to bring back to your creative spaces, and build a community of artists dedicated to deepening their relationship with their craft. I'm your host, Mike Irish. Thank you for joining us. Michelle Sakhai is a visual artist who resides in New York City. Michelle believes and trusts in the energy of the creative spirit as a healing force on the earth. She conveys this valuable message of healing through her art and her words. Today we discussed how Michelle defines transformative art, her recent exhibition of abstract renderings of tarot cards entitled Arcana, as well as her new book Awakening, the paintings of Michelle Sakhai. You can find Michelle on Instagram at Michelle Sakhai Art, as well as www.michellesakhai.com. Today's episode is brought to you by my friends over at Soundfly. They make really incredible music courses that you can either take on your own with a low-cost subscription or one-on-one with a professional mentor helping you every step of the way. It's kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure but for music education. You can learn beat making, mixing, songwriting, composing, arranging, synths, home recording, really anything. If you go the mentor route, they'll build a customized learning plan around your personal goals and needs and provide you with in-depth feedback on your work. But if you don't want the hands-on support, the courses are creative and niche enough for you to find your groove and have fun doing it at your own pace. Whether you want to learn how to orchestrate for a string ensemble, build a low-end heavy trap beat in Ableton Live, or brush up on your harmonic theory, there's definitely a course for you. And I've partnered with them to get you 15% off your monthly subscription. Head over to soundfly.com to sign up and enter code CreativePod15 to let them know I sent you, and to start improving on all the musical things that you always wanted to learn. And one last announcement before we get into the interview with Michelle Sakhai. I'm running a contest on MuseWorks Audio right now, giving you the chance to win a 3-track EP mixed and mastered by MuseWorks Audio. 3-track EP or 3 singles. You can go to www.museworksaudio.com/contest-entry to enter the contest. I've already had quite a few submissions so far from some really talented artists, and I've had some really cool conversations as well. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to having more people enter and finding out more about what you guys are up to creatively. So go to www.museworksaudio.com/contest-entry to enter the contest, and hopefully you win, and hopefully we chat and hear more about what you're up to. Beyond that, let's get into the show with Michelle Sakhai. Welcome, Michelle Sakhai, to The Conscious Creative. I'm really grateful for you taking the time, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Same here. Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. So you consider yourself to do transformative art, and I'm really curious how you would define that and what you feel makes your art transformative.
So, yeah, I call my work transformative art because I believe that all work is painting and creating is healing. And so for me, I do create when I say transformative because the way I work is that I like to take a deep breath and do a small meditation before I work to get aligned, with my higher self, the deeper part of me, and kind of tune into what is it that I'm feeling and allow that to come up to the surface. And when I'm working, I find that I'm working through all of those emotions, whatever it is that arises. So I've worked with um, student kids, older, adults, to surgeons, to regular moms, to all different kinds of people, and in the hospital setting as well. And I find that when we are conscious of our emotions and what we're feeling, whether it's in our bodies or and getting in touch with that space, and then creating from that space, and using that as the fuel to create. I find that not only do we transform those emotions of whether it's fear, shame, sadness, joy, um, whatever it is, and um, we work through that, and not only do we transform those emotions back to love, which I feel it always does, but we end up walking away with something really beautiful too. So um, and on a day to day, we just, from the moment I think we all wake up, we're constantly going outwards, whether it's on our phones or with the television, and to take that time to go inwards, I think is really important in today's world, especially now. And so you don't have to be an artist or a painter, but to just take that time to feel what's going on in your body. And I think that's very transformative. So for me, that's why I call it that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I love that. Doing the deeper work. I know that and maybe I didn't do it as consciously or with as much awareness, but I know that I've definitely healed so much in my own creative practice as well. And I
Hmm.
wouldn't be the human being that I am now if it wasn't for the
Hmm.
creative practice.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
totally understand what you mean. And I'm
Hmm.
really grateful for that explanation because I think it's really clear as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So you teach transformative art as well. And are there any lessons that or ideas that you like specifically try to pass on to your students? Anything that you find really helps them clarify and know how to move in that space?
So like I was saying before, I've worked in many different settings. So but pre-COVID, I was at the Harlem Hospital, and I was working with me in the children, mainly with children. Um, and then and they're all patients, of different backgrounds, and different reasons of why they're there. But I've also worked in a setting, spiritual center of San Francisco, where I work with a group of angel workers, and they're called angel workers because they partner up with someone that's going through the death process. So I, painted with this group, and it was just really amazing. And there were also doctors there as well. But you know, what bigger fear, and it's something that we all share, which is the fear of death. And so we sat together, and I think with these angel workers, since if they were able to face that fear and not be afraid, then the people they're partnering up with, they can share that with them, and work through that with them, which is such a deep healing for not only for themselves but who they're partnering up with. And it was really beautiful because I got to see. I think that we've never, when do we really ever sit down and consciously paint our fears? And for something that as humanity is, we all share that fear. And to watch that and see doctors tearing up and really, because I think they're working so hard on saving people, and they're not ever thinking about that for themselves. So having that space where we could all do it together in a group, it was quite moving.
Yeah, I could imagine. Well, I can't imagine, but I like to think I have some kind of an idea of what it would be like.
Hmm.
But did you find that sitting with death um, do you find that affected your worldview or the way that you move through life at all?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think um, so with that course, I would get I spent a lot of time studying like Dolores Cannon's work, and I recorded a lot of her YouTube videos, and I created my own kind of articles with that, and I shared that with the class as well. And I think a lot of these spiritual teachers all kind of say the same thing. So I like Dolores Cannon because she is known for that, and talking about parallel universes and life after death and all of that. So but having that knowledge too, and then together, um working on a soul level, like painting from a soul level, I found, yeah, it's profound. A lot of my paintings incorporate so much of what I've learned and what I'm learning, and also all different emotions, like I was saying before, where I have tears of sadness and tears of, fear to joy and happiness. So it incorporates all of that. Yeah, it's intimate work, and I think it's, again, like I was saying, you don't have to be an artist or a painter to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Do you you mentioned soul work. Is there anything you do to specifically get into that space to do soul work? Do you have any rituals or anything like that?
Um, I think for like I was saying in the beginning, I think for me personally, it just really just taking the time to meditate and to breathe before I work. And I, I take that time, really not even creatively to know what I'm going to create, or it's more just to align myself, um, and get in that space of oneness, I'd say. Um, because when I paint, I'd like to think that it's not from an ego place. It's not like it comes from a deeper part of myself, and ultimately that's how I want to connect with my viewers. It's not from Michelle. It's from the nameless part of me, which is what we're all, how we're all connected. So um yeah, I think that's pretty much it. It's not like I do all these prayers and things like that. It's just really just taking a moment to breathe.
I think that's taking a breath is that's something that can translate to so many things. I think that we would be living in a much different world if we all just took a few breaths before we did anything. But yeah, I think that's something that I should try and be a little bit more cognizant of before I get into a creative space, is actually taking a couple moments to breathe. When you
So
say when you say
yeah, I
aligned, oh,
just to
go ahead.
add to that, I want to just say, about um 6 to 8 years ago, when I first began this spiritual road, um, I I would put an alarm in my phone every day at a certain time, so it would stop and force me to take a conscious breath. And I found that over time, I just would do it throughout the day. and and then I no longer needed the alarm. But that's a great way of starting, is just putting an alarm in your phone.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I'm actually doing something right now where at the end of every hour, um, I'm writing down and I'm writing down what I've been doing for the past hour and taking some breaths and writing about what I've been thinking about and stuff like that. Um,
Wow.
which has been really interesting. I've only been doing it for a couple days. I'm just sort of trying to see
Mhm.
where my mind tends to be and how I react to things, and trying to figure out some sort of self-limiting beliefs and stuff like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Great.
but you recently did an exhibition with tarot cards, some sort of abstract renderings of different tarot cards, and I'd really like to hear more about that. And
Mhm.
um, I'm not super familiar with tarot. Did
Uh-huh.
you did you paint like is there did you paint all the cards or did you just choose some?
So I painted the major arcana cards. Um, so I recreated all of those cards, and it was it was an interesting series because um, I have learned spent some time learning about tarot, and it's like a lifetime of learning it, similar to oil paint, I think. But it was really interesting because I would work with these starting with there's so many different types of cars out there, but I felt like a lot of them I didn't really connect with. Like, I connected with the messages, but not so much the art on the cards. So for me, that was kind of a stepping point to be like, okay, if I were to translate this card, how would I translate it myself? So it took me a year to create the body of work because I wanted it to be authentic. I wanted to be experiencing each card to paint it. So I wouldn't paint it if I wasn't experiencing it in that moment. Um, so, there's certain cards like the Wheel of Fortune, Hangman, Death. These are major arcana cards because they are outside of ourselves. The control, it's like the um, it's hard to explain, but it's like, the energy that's so much bigger than ourselves, like who, the control of seasons, um, um, see the seasonal influence, even astrology and all these things. So it's like, how do you paint that? It's just so much. It's so much bigger than the human um, experience, I feel. So but I was really drawn to all of those cards, and I'd like to take that and create cards with that at someday.
Yeah, yeah. I have to say they're beautiful. It's really beautiful work. To anyone listening, they really need to have a look and see, because yeah, some of it is so stunning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just felt like they needed to be modernized,
Yeah.
because, a lot of these cards were created centuries ago, and I feel like the world
Yeah.
has changed and we've changed.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to just modernize
Yeah.
them and kind of bring them up to date.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have one that was most significant to you, or like one of the cards that the process impacted you the most?
Yes. So each card was, I mean, so when I began these pieces, I just literally just went for it. I didn't have a plan in my head, or um, or a thought of what it was going to look like. I just focused on the emotions. So um, for example, the hangman that I did, it's really unlike my style. Like people looking at it are like, wow, you painted that, because it's not like you at all. But I think that's proof of really, um, it wasn't about my style. It wasn't about me, you know. It wasn't about it. It was so much bigger than that. So I felt like, if I were to create that again, it would be all of those cards. It would be different, because I do feel like I'm changing all the time, and my state of being is always different. So I think the outcome would be different. But to answer your question, I'd say maybe the Wheel of Fortune might be one of my favorites and unexpected creations. And it was, trying to paint the universe into a painting. So I that was, and I have a time lapse of that on my website, so you can see me creating that piece.
Oh, cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. That sounds so cool. So you recently published a book entitled Awakening: The Paintings of Michelle Sakhai. I'd like to hear more about the concept behind it, and also what drove you to publish it and what the inspiration behind it is.
So I've always wanted to kind of create a book where I have all of my work together. And this book is a compilation of 200 of my paintings, created within the last 3-4 years, along with personal quotes, which I come up with while I'm working. I have a notepad, and every time I have any thoughts or ideas, I kind of jot them down. Anything that comes to me while I'm painting. And with this book, it took about 1.5 years to also make it. So I titled it Awakening because when I used to be a plein air painter, a landscape painter for about 20 years. And when I made the shift from landscape to from figurative to non-figurative to abstract work, I there was a transitional time for me where I started painting a series of skies. And at the time, it didn't really make a lot of sense as to why do I keep painting skies. But and I started bringing in the concept of metal leafing, because all of my paintings today have silver, copper, gold leaf with intertwined with the oil. So I started playing around with that idea and bringing it into my paintings, and I did this, you know, uh, um, several paintings of skies, and I had a show, and I was thinking of the title and couldn't think of one. And in my sleep, I had the word awakening come to me in gold letters, and that's why I wanted that to be the cover of my book later on. But so it was titled Awakening, which it really was an awakening on my spiritual self, and in turn my work. So I and if you spoke to me 10 years ago, I would have never thought I'd be doing this kind of work that I'm doing now, because I really never connected with abstract art. I avoided every class that had to do with abstract art um, in all of my schooling. So I, I did want to paint from a deeper place. And I think, landscape after landscape, there's just so many ways you can paint a tree, and I just wanted to, um, I started working internally instead of externally. So it was, it was really interesting. And I think as an artist, um, it was just a way of me to evolve my work. And it was really simultaneous, like for me to go down this spiritual path, and also go from painting the landscapes, which I was so used to from a child, to then exploring and bursting out of that shell to just painting from my inner self, with no guideline. It was really just um, all intuitive, and it still is. So um, Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Um, so the final question that I want to ask you, and I
Mhm.
think you obviously do so much awesome stuff with your teaching and working in the hospitals, and just the way you define transformative art, I think is really beautiful. And I'm curious what impact you want to ultimately leave with your creations.
Huh. Well, I I think um I think the beauty with being a painter and a creative person is like we never know what we're going to do next, you know? And I and to say that, I have this plan would I'd only be fooling myself because it's like, what's that quote? We plan and we make a plan and God laughs or something. It's like, um, but I think I I believe in just being, an authentic creator and just um, staying true to who I am, and I believe that that really it connects to who it's supposed to connect to, and I to just really let go of the expectation that what that my art has to look like something or and I think that's a daily lesson for me as well, to just kind of not have that expectation out there. It's like, I love to create, but I'm also creating because I have to create. So it's um I think I just always want to connect with others and like circling back to I guess the first question which was about painting and I was saying how I find it's healing for me and I hope that it's healing for others and so just bringing some more light into this world, I guess, in a nutshell, and especially in a time like this. I have an exhibit right now called Garden of Peace, and it's showing at the university, Hofstra University, where I graduated from. And I created most of the paintings during COVID. It was right around spring. So I have a painting titled Silent Spring in the show because the world was at such a silent, it was quiet and no one there was all this uncertainty and fear and in the world and I felt like um it's still spring, the flowers are still blooming and the sun is still out and it was this beautiful time but at the same time such a sad time and scary time in the world with us humans. So I the whole show is on florals and it's very colorful and I just wanted to bring in some light and I think that's what I strive to do when I
Yeah,
create.
yeah, that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. Is there anything you want to blast out to the audience before we wrap up? Like where they can reach you, what to look out
Absolutely.
for?
Yeah, thank you again for having me. It was really a
Yeah,
pleasure and um, you can see my work at michellesakhay.com. That's MichellesakHai.com and on Instagram, Michelle Sakhai Art. Feel free to DM me. I always love to hear from you all. So stay safe and be joyous. Thank you.
awesome. Thanks so much, Michelle. I want to say thanks again to Michelle for coming on the show. As with all these conversations, I really enjoyed this. It's just such a pleasure to sit down and talk with people for a good period of time. It's not something that we do every day, but there's so much value in it I'm finding. I think the first thing that I would take from the conversation is her definition of transformative art. It seems very obvious the way that she explained it, and I think that's because her explanation was so simple but so clear. It's literally taking these emotions that we have and transforming them ultimately, as she said, back to love. And I know that I've had this experience as a creative myself where I take pain and sit with it and work with it and transform it into a healed version of itself. And it is a really beautiful process. And I think ultimately what the creative process is all about. The other quick actionable tip that I think that she gave is just setting a little timer in your phone so you can just be reminded to take a few breaths in the middle of the day, and also to sit down at your creative station and take a couple breaths before you get started. Feel where you're at and let it flow through you to express it. I think those are the two really clear takeaways for me from this interview. I would really encourage everyone to go check out her Instagram and her website, because her art is truly very, very beautiful, and the work that she puts into it and the work that she does outside of her creative space as well is pretty incredible stuff. So please check it out and enjoy it. And as always, leave a review, subscribe, like, comment on YouTube, and all that stuff. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, if you would like to join the contest for the 3-track EP mixed and mastered by Museworks Audio, go to www.museworksaudio.com/contest-entry. And thanks for listening, as always, and see you next week. Cheers.